Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to give you my quick spoiler-free review of the new psychological horror movie Speak No Evil, starring James McAvoy and Mackenzie Davis. Now this movie is a remake of the 2022 Danish film by the same name, so when Blumhouse announced that they was going to pick up the property and redo the movie, I was not particularly excited about it, especially since the movie is very new, it's less than 2 years old, and the original is in English, so there was no need for a version to translate it to English. But after watching the original, which I do think is a very good movie by the way, it is a very bleak and dark movie, one that I'm not really going to rewatch a lot. It's kind of like the original Texas Chainsaw movie. While you appreciate what they did, it's not something that you're really going to watch again because it does end on a down note, and it is one of those depressing, dreadful movies to get through. So I was kind of anticipating the movie just a little bit, see what they would do to change it up for American audiences. So it tells the same story as the original film, in which an American couple is staying at a resort, they on vacation, they run into a British couple, they become friends. The British couple sends them an invitation to come to their countryside house, and upon arrival, small things happen here and there, and then sooner or later the American couple realized that the British couple is not what they seem. So the question is, did this American version do any justice, or should Blumhouse left it on the cutting room floor? But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that like button, share, subscribe, and with that out the way, let's continue on.
And here we go.
Like I mentioned before, this will be spoiler free. I will not spoil anything that the trailer did not do, because the trailer did a horrible job of showing you what the movie was about without spoiling anything. There are heavy spoilers in the trailer, but I would just talk about a few things here and there that I like and maybe didn't like. So kicking things off, the first thing I have to talk about is the acting and the performances by all the actors in this movie, particularly James McAvoy and Mackenzie Davis. James McAvoy did an outstanding job. He's probably the highlight of the movie. Every time this guy was on screen, he kind of ate up the scenery. We already know that he can do great acting as far as playing split personalities, as we saw in the movie Split. He have this way of persuading the protagonist couple to come along, to go along with what he's doing, but yet at the same time you could tell there's something sinister, something a little offset and off-putting behind his eyes. Something about him is just not quite right. So he does a great job. There's the scene in the trailer where they give him a compliment. You can see him smiling, but at the same time you can see some type of anger through the smile where he's trying to hide it. He was phenomenal. He was the thing that I walked away most impressed with, and someone that this guy deserves more roles in Hollywood. But not to be too outdone, Mackenzie Davis was right there behind him. She did a fantastic job. This is the same lady from the last Terminator movie that played the female Terminator hybrid. So she was able to, when things went off in the third act, she was very believable in the action scenes, things that she was able to pull off. She was the common sense character in this movie, the one that was making the most sense. There's always in this type of movie someone that, even though everybody else look over the obvious, there's always that one character that sort of makes sense, that's very believable, and she was that character. Another standout performances were by the child actors. Dan Hugh played the little boy in this movie, and Alice LaFleur was the girl Agnes. Both of them did a very decent job, very believable as real people. But the little boy Dan Hugh was outstanding in this movie because he had to show everything he was thinking, all his emotions through facial features, hand gestures, and he really brought this movie up another notch. A lot of times you have child actors in your movie's going to hinge on their performance. Is they going to bring your movie down or bring your movie up? And in this case, I'm glad to say that the two child actors did not bog this movie down. They actually brought the movie up, and they both was very outstanding actors, and I look forward to seeing them in future events because I think they have a bright future ahead of them. Another thing about this movie that I like was the pacing. It started off like a typical vacation. There's little subtle things that are said here and there, and James McAvoy and his wife, they do a good job of convincing you why they do these things, making it somewhat believable why you will let this go until it escalates to a point where the couple feel like they need to get away. So the pacing is pretty good. About the time you get to the third act, it's very tense. The action scenes are pretty good. It holds you to the edge of your seat. And me seeing the original, even though this movie does take different turns here and there, I was on the edge of my seat throughout the whole time. It was very tense and very thrilling. And the entire last 30 minutes of this movie was non-stop action. But no movie is perfect. And the things that kind of irritated me a little bit was there was this one situation that occurred where the protagonist could have gotten out of the situation they was in, but they were thrown right back because they went back for a certain thing that really could have been replaced. And you really have to stop and think, if you was in this situation, you really have to suspend your sense of disbelief that you would go back for this item. That kind of irked me a little bit. Even though it's following mostly what happened in the original movie, it's something that I really couldn't see myself doing if I was in this situation. Another thing that really kind of irritated me about this movie, but I understand why it was the way it was, and that's the husband in this movie. Dude really didn't have a backbone. The way they showed this guy throughout the majority of duration of this movie, basically he was
What a bitch.
But there is a reason why they made the character like that. There is social commentary in this movie about how we as society is to a point where people put us in uncomfortable situations, and in order not to be rude, a lot of times we bite our tongues, we don't say anything, we're really afraid of offending other people, even though it's not to the degree that this couple goes through. A lot of times people put us in situations that we don't want to be in, or say things that we really aren't cool with, but we just let it go because we don't want to be that person to bring attention to it. So it fits with the character, but as a man, there are things that was done, that was said, that any guy with a backbone, or really any person with a backbone, really wouldn't let a lot of stuff go. Like I mentioned before, this is a remake of a Danish film. So if you have seen that movie, there are things that are slightly different. So it is kind of a different movie while at the same time being the same movie, if that makes any sense. So if you already seen the original, I do highly recommend that you see this version. Overall, this is a good adaptation of the original movie. While I do like the tone of the original movie slightly better, it is a little too bleak, a little too dreadful, and it really has no rewatch value whatsoever. So with that being said, this movie is more on the level of American audiences, something that we can watch more than one time. And if you're a fan of intense psychological thrillers, I recommend that you go see this movie. And when it comes out on Blu-ray, I recommend that you go out and buy it, because this movie is purchase worthy. So what do you guys think? Have you seen the original movie? Have you seen this version of Speak No Evil? Which one do you think is better? Do you think this movie is a good psychological horror movie? Or are you in the camp that think this movie is overrated? Remember, these are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comment section down below, and keep your eyes open for my next video.